Hello, everybody. This is the weekly Conversations with God um, book group. We're on book 3, and actually, we've read other books besides Conversations with God, but they have all been by Neale Donald Walsch. And this is a humanities team and evolution revolution group that we have all become quite fond of. And last week, we read from the place that says all things that proceed from you return to you. And then we decided to read a little bit or talk a little bit more about some of the things that we read about last week. And I've got a couple things marked. After God speaks to all things that proceed from you and return to you, towards the end of where God is speaking, let's see what it. It's talking about when people don't keep their agreements, and you will simply allow them to walk their path and make their choices and create their own experience of themselves. And whatever they have not given you, you will not miss, for you will know that there is more where that came from, and that they are not your source of that, but you are. And it reminded me of when I adopted my 2 older children. They were then 4 and 8. Their mother had died, and their mother happened to be a friend of mine, and then ended up with their dad. But being a person who lost a parent at a young age, for me, I can remember feeling very uncomfortable in loving my new dad, who turned out to be a wonderful man. But I felt like my biological father, I would be being disloyal. And so when I adopted my 2 kids, they went through a period of time where, particularly my son, who was then 8, he felt very much like he was being disloyal to his mother. And so I got all these candles out and lit them all. Or we didn't, we lit one candle. Then I had the 2 kids light a candle in their hand from the one candle I lit, and just had them light all these candles. There's about 20 candles there. And I said, the flame is not going to go away. That's what love is. Love does not go away. And you can love me. You can love, obviously, your biological mother. You can love as many people as you want. And that flame is never going to dissipate. And that's how I understand what God was saying here, is that there's more where that came from. And they are not your source of that, but you are. Anyway, I thought I'd just share that.
You have so much grace, Nanette. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for saying so.
That was a beautiful thing you did for those kids.
Thank you. And we've been together now for 20. How old am I? About 25 years. And I couldn't love them anymore than if they were my own. I adopted them years ago. And it's been good. It's, I've been perfect, but no family is. Then there was a part this is when Neil says, "Oh my God, stop it, stop it. You're killing every good thought I ever had about marriage. This can't be God writing this. God would never say such things about religion and marriage." And he says, "Yeah." God says, "Yeah, you have invoked my name, waved my flag, carried crosses on your battlefields for centuries, all as proof that I love one people more than another, and would ask you to kill to prove it." And God says, "Yet I tell you this, my love is unlimited and unconditional." And it made me think of the movie, I think it's the Ten Commandments, where Moses parts the Red Sea and the Egyptians come into that parted area, and supposedly God drowned all the Egyptians. And I was pretty darn young when that movie came out, and it was the first time that I went, "Oh, that means God takes sides." And it was very upsetting to me. And obviously, if I'm remembering it that vividly, and I don't think I've seen it again since I was younger, but I was just wondering if anybody else had that aha moment when you went, "That means God takes sides."
No, I mean, I'm aware of people teaching that God takes sides, but I always knew that that wasn't true.
Well, it was kind of weird for me because I was relatively young, and I think until I saw that movie, I didn't think that. I was probably 8 or 9 years old. So thus far, so a movie put the idea into my head. Over.
Yeah, and for me, what put the idea in my head was when my mother would drag me around all these different churches and I would listen to what got said. And I got the idea from those experiences. And I just always knew that it just wasn't true.
I got the idea from competitive sport when I was a kid because I couldn't understand why it would matter if one person won instead of the other. And I realised as a kid you had to pretend that you minded who won.
That's a very good point. And it reminds me a little bit of when my older son was 10 or 12 years old and he's playing soccer. And they would make such a big deal out of who's winning. And it was mostly the parents on the sidelines, going, "Go, go, go, get it, get it, get it, yeah, yeah, yeah." And I always thought it was a little bit strange that they would get trophies for both teams instead of, I would have said, have a party, have a celebration that you all played and had fun, but trophies for not winning. I just thought that part was a little bit strange. I thought it was because there is competition in our world. But I did think if they just had a party celebrating the time they had during that school year, that would have been a better approach. But that is just my opinion.
But see, ultimately, we aren't competitive. We shouldn't be competitive because each and every one of us is an individuated expression of divinity. And so we have the creative power within us. So this whole competitive structure, it actually came out of lack. It came out of a mentality of lack, which comes out of a mentality of separation.
That's
It's true. When I was in grade 13, I had an English teacher who, our first class in September, she asked everyone to go home and write a few paragraphs about the benefits of competition. And, you know, I couldn't really think of a benefit. But anyway, when we came back to her class the next time, anyone who has saw a benefit to competition, she said, there are no benefits to competition. We all benefit from cooperation. And, you know, this is like, well, 45 years ago,
Mhm.
more than.
Beautiful.
Yeah, she
Beautiful.
was a beautiful being. I loved her.
Good points. Good points. And I think that because I know when I would talk to my kids about, they're saying, well, so and so did a better job on the test than I did. And I said, well, you did the best you were supposed to do. You know, and my two older kids were study nuts. My youngest one was like, he just never liked school. So he would never come to me and say something like that. Or he might, I might say, well, if you studied, but you know, that was his path. So believe me, nagging him didn't make it any different. So that I didn't do that for long. Now I don't know if people in Europe or the UK, and I'm not even sure about Canada, but there is a huge church mostly in the South, but you can find them in every state in this country, called the Southern Baptists. And last weekend, I think it was after our call, I had to go to the store and I was listening to National Public Radio. And they were talking about the Southern Baptists who've decided they've got to get rid of the racial stuff. They've got to get rid of, creed, religion. And it was all driven by a black man. And he just said, how can we call ourselves Christians when we don't act Christ-like? And apparently it's created a huge positive result in a big conference they just had. And they said, of course, there were some people that said, well, we're going to break away and we're going to be Southern Baptist A, whatever. But for the most part, I guess it was a very, very productive thing. And it made me think, see, there is hope for bringing people together. And I made this note in my book because God goes through this thing that says religion has done little as well to cause you to change your behaviors. You're killing each other, condemning each other, making each other wrong. And in fact, it is your religions which have been encouraging you to do so. So with regard to religion, I merely observe that you say you want it to take you to one place and it is taking you to another. And I think because the Southern Baptist Conference has decided, we're not going to play this way anymore, it really gave me a sense of hope. And I've actually noticed churches around here, Presbyterian churches, Methodist churches, Unity Church, of course, but they're all saying things like, it doesn't matter whether you're Muslim or Jewish or Catholic or, white, black, gay, straight, you're welcome in our church. And so I'm seeing a little bit of an evolution here where I live. And I was just wondering if anybody else was noticing that where they live.
yes, of course, it's, when I grew up in the, well, back in like 1919, my Hebrew grandmother married an Anglican minister, and people would say, well, well, why did they do that? And I said, well, I think it's because they loved each other. Like, she was 40 and he was 50, and it was the first marriage for both. But then I grew up in the Anglican church, and it was so patriarchal, and really, and then I don't know, 40 years ago, I guess, they allowed women to become ministers, and then a lot of men left the church. But then, the church population declined so much that, they started saying, just come. It doesn't matter what you wear. It doesn't matter, where you were before. Just come and be part of this community. So I think that's happening. And I think it's happening a lot of places in this world.
Yeah, I think it is happening in other parts of the world. It's happening in Scotland, certainly, which was a very, very straight, stiff kind of religious country at one time.
Yes, look how far Ireland's come. I mean, just when I was like a teenager and in my early 20s, they were, there was all this killing going on, if you were Protestant and Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
Thank goodness that stopped, right? Although we are seeing now with, there's a lot more permission being given at the moment, at the current state of our insanity, to vocalize your hatred.
Yep. And, or so it seems to me, it was a calmer week last week than it was the week before around the world. Or I may not have listened to as much news. Anyway, does anybody have anything else they want to talk about from this chapter? Okay. Well, Linda, where do we begin? Linda? Can anybody hear
Can
me?
you hear me?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, okay.
yeah,
Can you
you
hear
might
me?
comment.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, where were we?
So where we were was they were talking about the marriage vows,
Oh, that's right.
and God was saying, let's lighten up here. Go ahead, put the vows in. I'll take responsibility for them, and people will love them. It'll give them an idea of what we're talking about here, why you may even want to invite others to take these vows, which are not really vows at all, but marriage statements. So that's where we are.
Okay. Then I think
Ready
that's
to
where.
go?
Yep. Go ahead and start.
Okay. So this is Neil saying, well, okay, here's what Nancy and I said to each other when we got married, thanks to the inspiration we received. And this is the minister now, his words. Neil and Nancy have not come here tonight to make a solemn promise or to exchange a sacred vow. Nancy and Neil have come here to make a public their love for each other, to give notice to their truth, to declare their choice to live and partner and grow together, out loud and in your presence, out of their desire that we will all come to feel a very real and intimate part of their decision, and thus make it even more powerful. They've also come here tonight in the further hope that their ritual of bonding will help bring us all closer together. If you are here tonight with a spouse or a partner, Let this ceremony be a reminder, a redirection of your own loving bond. We'll begin by asking the question, why get married? Neil and Nancy have answered this question for themselves, and they've told me their answer. Now I want to ask them one more time so they can be sure of their answer, certain of their understanding, and firm in their commitment to the truth they share. And the minister gets 2 roses from the table. This is the ceremony of roses, in which Nancy and Neil share their understandings and commemorate that sharing. Now, Nancy and Neil, you have told me it is your firm understanding that you are not entering into this marriage for reasons of security, that the only real security is not in owning or possessing, nor in being owned or possessed, not in demanding or expecting, not even in hoping that what you think you need in life will be supplied by the other, but rather in knowing that everything you need in life, all the love, all the wisdom, all the insight, all the power, all the knowledge, all the understanding, all the nurturing, all the compassion, and all the strength resides within you. And that you are not each marrying the other in hopes of getting these things, but in hopes of giving these gifts that the other might have them in even greater abundance. Is that your firm understanding tonight? They say it is. And Neil and Nancy, you have told me it is your firm understanding that you are not entering into this marriage as a means of in any way limiting, controlling, hindering, or restricting each other from any true expression and honest celebration of that which is the highest and best within you, including your love of God, your love of life, your love of people, your love of creativity, your love of work, or any aspect of your being which genuinely represents you and brings you joy. Is that still your firm understanding tonight? And they say it is. Finally, Nancy and Neil, you have said to me that you do not see marriage as producing obligations, but rather as providing opportunities. Opportunities for growth, for self-expression, for lifting your lives to their highest potential, for healing every false thought or small idea you've ever had about yourself, and for ultimate reunion with God through the communion of your 2 souls. That this is a holy communion, a journey through life with one you love as an equal partner, sharing equally both in the authority and the responsibilities inherent in any partnership, hearing equally what burdens there be, basking equally in the glories. Is that the vision you wish to enter into now? And they say, it is. I now give you these red roses, symbolizing your individual understandings of these earthly things, that you both know and agree how life will be with you in bodily form, and wherein the physical structure called marriage. Give these roses now to each other as a symbol of your sharing of these agreements and understandings with love. Now, please each of you take this white rose. It is a symbol of your larger understandings of your spiritual nature and your spiritual truth. It stands for the purity of your real and highest self and of the purity of God's love, which shines upon you now and always. She gives Nancy the rose with Neil's ring on the stem, and Neil the rose with Nancy's ring on the stem. What symbols do you bring as a reminder of the promises given and received today? They each remove the rings from the stems, giving them to the minister, who holds them in her hand as she says, "A circle is the symbol of the sun and of the earth and the universe. It is a symbol of holiness and of perfection and peace. It is also the symbol of eternality of spiritual truth. That which has no beginning and no end. And in this moment, Neil and Nancy choose it to also be a symbol of unity, not of possession, of joining, but not of restricting, of encirclement, but not entrapment. For love cannot be possessed, nor can it be restricted. And I have a typo in my book.
It says,
And each,
and
what does
the
it
soul,
say?
and the soul can never be entrapped.
Okay, yeah, so mine says, and he soul. Okay,
Yeah.
and the soul can never be entrapped. Now, Neil and Nancy, please take these rings you wish to give one to the other. They take each other's rings. Neil, please repeat after me. I, Neil, ask you, Nancy, to be my partner, my lover, my friend, and my wife. I announce and declare my intention to give you my deepest friendship and love, not only when your moments are high, but when they are low, not only when you remember clearly who you are, but when you forget, not only when you are acting with love, but when you are not. I further announce before God and those present here that I will always seek to see the light of divinity within you and seek always to share the light of divinity within me, even and especially in whatever moments of darkness may come. It is my intention to be with you forever in a holy partnership of the soul, that we may do together God's work, sharing all that is good within us with all those lives who we touch. The minister then turns to Nancy. Nancy, do you choose to grant Neil's request that you be his wife? And she answers, I do. Now, Nancy, please repeat after me. I, Nancy, ask you, Neil. And she makes the same bow. The minister turns to Neil. Neil, do you choose to grant Nancy's request that you be her husband? And he answers, I do. Please then, both of you, take hold of the rings you would give each other and repeat after me. With this ring, I thee wed. I take now the ring you give me. They exchange rings and place it on my hand. They place the rings on their hands, that they may see and know of my love for you. The minister closes. We recognize with full awareness that only a couple can administer the sacrament or marriage to each other, and only a couple can sanctify it. Neither my church nor any power vested in me by the state can grant me the authority to declare that only two hearts can declare, and what only two souls can make real. And so now, inasmuch as you, Nancy, and you, Neil, have announced the truths that are already written in your hearts and have witnessed the same in the presence of these, your friends and the one living Spirit, we observe joyfully that you have declared yourself to be husband and wife. Let us now join in prayer. Spirit of love and life, out of this world, two souls have found each other. Their destinies shall now be woven into one design, and their perils and their joys shall not be known apart. Nancy and Neil, may your home be a place of happiness for all who enter it, a place where the old and the young are renewed in each other's company, a place for growing and a place for sharing, a place for music and a place for laughter, a place for prayer. Shh, quiet. Sorry. and a place for love. Hang on, let me see if I can get these people to quiet down. Okay, where were we?
You had just finished the paragraph that says, Neil and Nancy, may your home be a place of happiness for all who enter it. So you
Okay.
should be at may those who are nearest. That's where you should start.
Right, okay. May those who are nearest to you be constantly enriched by the beauty and the bounty of your love for one another. May your work be a joy of your life that serves the world, and may your days be good and long upon the earth. Amen and amen. I am so touched by that. I am so honored, so blessed to have found someone in my life who could say those words with me and mean them. Dear God, thank you for sending me Nancy.
I'm going to stop you
You
right
are
there.
okay.
I personally, which is redundant since I said I believe these vows are quite beautiful, and I could tell by your voice cracking that you did as well, Linda.
Yeah.
And I had the absolute honor to have this very same vows, and Neil was the minister for my husband and me when we got married. And it's such a beautiful ceremony because the first 2 roses are red, and then he brings in the 2 white roses for the symbolism of purity. And I don't think I've read these since we got married 10 years ago or more. So, and the way I received it, I mean, I've read it before in this book, but it's called The Ceremony of the Roses somewhere else. Don't know where. But anyway, what did other people think of the vows or not vows?
Beautiful. When Scott and I got married in 1980, it was a draft dodger from the Vietnam War that came up and lived in the wilderness of New Brunswick, and he wrote a book called Asleep in the Woods, and then he became a United Church minister, and he wrote the vows for Scott and I, and he also encouraged me to keep my own name and to not change my name. And you know, when you have something that's so personal and without attachment, right, it's filled with love, I think it has great meaning. Over.
I agree with that.
Hi.
Is that Anne?
Yes, this is Anne.
Hi.
Hello, everybody. Hi. So, sometimes I don't like this Sunday, and the reason is because it brings up in me the cynical part of me. In other words, when I hear stuff like this, because I haven't seen this or had an experience of this, because this is like, it's almost like the fairy tale. This is the way it should be. And, I listen to some of the things we read here, and the cynic comes up in me like, yeah, sure, right, And then you share with me that you were married this way and that Neil did the ceremony. And what that does is it blows my false beliefs and my limited thinking up completely, because it does exist. And that's why I think, like, the group that we have here and the groups that are creating around the world, that's what's needed, because we have these limited perspectives or experiences. Just because I haven't experienced it doesn't mean it isn't real. But my reality is based on my experience. And if I haven't experienced something, it can't be my reality. I have to first come to a place where I can conceive the idea. And we go back to the boats again, that from the shore that we've talked about in the past. But so I thank you. I can't believe that you were actually married this way. And what a great beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I'm just very moved, because thank you for blowing up my false belief for that voice in my head that isn't the truth of my heart and the truth of my gnosis, of what I know to be true, the way that it really is. If you can follow any of that, you'll.
Yep. And I can, and I don't want to say that my marriage is walking on water.
No, I don't. Yeah. But the fact that you came, like my husband and I, had a commitment for the highest and best good of ourselves and of each other, and that was the bottom line premise. And despite whatever we've gone through, because we're no longer together, we still have that premise in our lives for the other.
Mm-hmm.
So in that way, it does exist. The heartbreak was that he was a Vietnam vet, and that he just can't be in relationship, and that he's just so deeply wounded emotionally, and that there's nothing that we can do about someone else's path. They have to walk the path that they walk and go through what they go through. And sometimes it's painful. I don't know how this relates to anything, but it's just learning how to love someone despite not getting what you want, despite it not being the way you want, despite what you think they ought to be. Acceptance,
Mm-hmm.
accepting things on life's terms, and knowing that God is, that the sole purpose is God, and that God is love. And the bottom line is that it's about the love. It's about the love we give. It's about the love we share. That's basically my message in that.
It's very well said.
There.
And thank you.
I'll end with that.
Okay. Well, one of the things I think that's important is that because this wasn't my first marriage, and it was more than my second. And I think what we have to realize is that, excuse me, I think it was Wayne Dyer that not everybody, we all have trolleys, and the trolleys, different people get on for certain periods of time and then they get off. So not everybody on the trolley is with you from birth to death. But we learn. They come on our trolley for a reason.
Yeah. Well, not everyone you meet you're meant to meet, but not everyone you meet is meant to stay there. Something like that, I think.
Correct.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I think these marriage statements, it's easy for us to forget if you've read CWG an awful lot, that these are such revolutionary statements compared to the statements that many of us make or made in these ceremonies. They're really so different and so amazing.
Well, and back when the, I thank goodness that Tom York, didn't go off to war and lived in the wilderness of New Brunswick and then became a United Church minister, but he still suffered from alcohol misuse because of that experience, right? And eventually he did stop drinking, but, when we send our young people off to war, 18, 19, 20, and they come back and then they have post-traumatic stress disorder, right? We're just starting to realize, and with a whole lot of compassion, what creates these things. And, it's conditioning and trauma that we experience as youth, and it's, you know, we're just, you know, we're growing up about that. We're just learning about it. And, you know, all those young people that came back from the Vietnam War, we didn't even have a thing called post-traumatic stress disorder then. We didn't know how to love them and help them to feel safe. And yeah, that's over.
I agree with everything you said, Christine, because I was, and I know most of you know this, but I was married to a Vietnam vet. That was the father of my 2 older children. And it's happening to the younger people today that are, you know, coming back from Afghanistan and other places. And I've always said, because I lived the turmoil with my husband, and it affects every single person in the family. And it's just so awful that I told my kids that I would duck, excuse me, having a coughing fit. Somebody else talk for a second.
We can just sit in silence, Annette, until you come back.
That's what I get when I don't remember how to drink water properly. Um, but anyway, I think these people are coming back from this war-torn area, and I just told my kids, if they ever reinstate the draft, I would duct tape them to the hood of my car and drive far north or far south. But I would never put my kids in that position. Over.
Well, and you know, when I was younger, my sister and my niece actually live in Tobermory, which is where Lake Huron and Georgian Bay meet. And one of the people that I knew there, he's since passed, but he was also just the kindest, gentlest soul, like Tom York was the minister that married Scott and I. And he too was a Vietnam draft dodger who could never go back because he'd get arrested. But I mean, so there's Tom and there's Jay, and you know, who knows how many other ultra sensitive souls are being placed in these positions of really unimaginable violence. And you know, of course that's going to hurt your heart, and it's going to hurt your psyche. When the Vietnam War started, Scott's dad was in the States at Harvard, and as soon as that war started, because Scott and his brother Grant would have been drafted as well, he hightailed it back to Canada. It's you know, I don't think we still fully understand how traumatizing war is to the sweet, sweet, innocent human heart. Over.
And if I'm not mistaken, wasn't the Vietnam War the first war that was in our living room on the television?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. And yes, it was.
It was also the first war that really made, you know, that made it on the newsstand in ways that never had been before. Remember the cover of Time magazine with the execution of that one guy?
Yes.
I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that cover of Time magazine, ever.
we definitely have lived lives in a time that have we've seen some not pretty things.
But we've also seen a lot of miracles, and that we are living in miraculous times, and the unity consciousness grows with every breath we take. And like when I started coordinating substance use treatment for the province of Ontario in 1991, we had 396 computers, which were top of the line back then. And look at what we have now, terabytes and gigabytes, and you talk to something the size of your phone and she answers you back, sometimes with a little bit of sauce and lip to her, like Siri. But we are in miracle times as well. And we are in times of great empowerment for unity and the masses, not just the patriarchy. And I'm grateful for that. Over.
We do have much to be grateful for. Thank you for reminding us. Okay, we have just a few minutes left, and there's only like a page and a half to, or 2.5 pages.
I think we should try and finish it.
Yeah, I do too. That's what I was going to say.
Okay.
So go
Thanks,
ahead.
Linda.
Thank you.
Okay, so Neil had just gotten done saying
What page
thank you
are we
for sending me.
What page are we on now?
It depends what book you have. So we're not quite sure.
It's right
What
after
chapter are we in? What chapter are we in?
13.
Okay,
It's
thanks.
right after
It's like the
wedding.
last page, and it's the last page and a half in chapter 13.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to mute myself now.
Okay, so Neil says, thank you for God, dear God, thank you for sending me Nancy. And God replies, you're a gift to her too, you know. Well, I hope so. Trust me. Do you know what I wish? No, what? I wish that all people could make those marriage statements. I wish all people could cut them out or copy them or use them for their wedding. And I bet we'd see the divorce rate plummet. Well, some people would have a very hard time saying those things, and many would have a hard time staying true to them. I just hope that we can stay true to them. I mean, the problem with putting those words in here is that now we have to live up to them. You're not planning on living up to them? Well, of course we are, but we're human, just like everyone else. Yet now, if we fail, if we falter, if anything should happen to our relationship, or good grief that we should ever choose to end it in its present form, all kinds of people are going to be disillusioned. Nonsense. They'll know that you're being true to yourself. They'll know that you've made a later choice, a new choice. Remember what I told you in book 1. Do not confuse the length of your relationship with its quality. You are not an icon, and neither is Nancy, and no one should put you there, and you should not put yourself there. Just be human. Just be fully human. If at some later point you and Nancy feel you wish to reform your relationship in a different way, you have a perfect right to do that. That is the point of this whole dialogue. And it was the point of those statements we made. Exactly. I'm glad that you see that. Yes, I like those marriage statements, and I'm glad that we put them in. It's a wonderful new way to begin a life together. No more asking the woman to promise to love, honor, and obey. It was self-righteous, self-inflated, self-serving men who demanded that. You're right, of course. And it was even more self-righteous and self-serving for men to claim that such male preeminence was God ordained. Again, you are right. I never ordained any such thing. At last, marriage words can really be inspired by God. Words which make a chattel personal property out of no one. Words which speak the truth about love. Words which place no limitations, but promise only freedom, words to which all hearts can remain true. There are those who will say, of course, anyone can keep vows which ask nothing of you. What will you say to that? Well, I'll say it's much more difficult to free someone than control them. When you control someone, you get what you want. When you free someone, they get what they want. You will have spoken wisely. I have a wonderful idea. I think we should make a little booklet of those marriage statements, kind of a little prayer book for people to use on their wedding day. It would be a small book, and it would contain not only those words, but a whole ceremony and the key observations about love and relationship from all three books in this dialogue, as well as some special prayers and meditations on marriage, which it turns out you're not against. I'm so happy because it started to sound for a minute as if you were anti-marriage. How could I be against marriage? We're all married. We're married to each other now and forevermore. We are united. We are one. Ours is the biggest marriage ceremony ever held. My vow to you is the greatest vow ever made. I will love you forever and free you for everything. My love will never bind you in any way, and because of this, you are bound eventually to eventually love me. For freedom, be who you are, is your greatest desire and my greatest gift. Do you take me now to be your lawfully wedded partner and co-creator according to the highest laws of the universe? I do. And do you take me now as your partner and co-creator? I do. I always have. And now, through all eternity, we are one. Amen and amen.
That's beautiful. And
Thank you so much, Linda. It
Yeah.
really is a
Well,
beautiful, rich chapter.
You're very welcome. It's my honor.
yeah,
I'm honored to know you, Linda.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you. I'm honored to be in this group. Truly, truly.
I second that thought, Linda. I feel like this group came together, and we have different people that join us from time to time, and
We've been a core group for many years, though.
yep.
'Cause I remember getting up at when you were having it at 7 o'clock on Friday mornings. That was years ago. I
Yeah.
was grateful when we came over to Sunday.
Yeah. Yep.
And Arlette, welcome.
Yes, welcome, Arlette. That's what I was just getting ready to say is we often have newcomers, and, we're a pretty laid back group. If you feel like talking, you can talk. If you don't feel like it, you don't have to. And, but we're happy to have you here.
Where are you from, Arlette?
Arlette, you're on mute.
Maybe Arlette doesn't want to talk.
That's fine.
Oh, there. What happened? Oh, she's over there now. She changed places all of a sudden. Anyway, the Brady Bunch screen here. All right, well, let's call it a Sunday. It's 1 o'clock or top of the hour. And
Okay. Just a reminder to everybody, next Saturday, July 1st, is Canada's 150th anniversary. So send us good wishes, please.
we will. We will.
Oh,
We definitely will. Okay. Love you all.
Love you too.
Glad you're
love
here.
you all. See you next week.
Yep. See you next week in chapter 14.
Yep.
Bye, everyone.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Have a great week.
Yep.
You
You
too.
too.
Love you.
Love you too.